Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Inside Man United. My name is Rowan Brennan, and this is today's news for Monday, January 15th. And thank you very much once again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the match last night. I'll have a quick chat about that when we kick off the episode. But before we get into that, let's have a quick look at the headlines. Today's headlines. Manchester United go up against Brighton, chasing Argentinian defender Facundo Medina. Erik ten Hag also going after Arthur Vermeeren, the young midfield prodigy from Royal Antwerp, to help bolster his midfield options and provide some much-needed youth in an ageing midfield. Ineos and United seem to be leading the chase for Giorgio Scalvini, with United pulling ahead in negotiations with a potential January transfer in line. United also chasing a Sporting Lisbon midfielder, and we might be able to use Christian Eriksen to help get the deal over the line. Former foe from the Champions League, Rooney from Copenhagen, the 18-year-old explains what his ambitions are for his career, and will he end up at United? We also give you the details on Mejbri Fernandes' deal with Benfica, and as Hannibal Mejbri makes his way to Sevilla. All that coming up. So just before we kick off into the headlines, last night's match, Manchester United 2, Tottenham Hotspur 2, a cracker of a game, very, very good, and an improved performance from the team. And Christian Eriksen looking a little bit leggy, and some, suspect performances around the pitch, but overall a much better performance from United than we've seen against top six opposition this season and in parts of last season. Now, before the game, if you'd offered me a draw, I certainly would have taken, and I would have liked a high-scoring draw, because I just want to see the team scoring goals, to be honest. Conceding, that can happen, but when you're completely blunt up top, like we have been for quite a while, I wanted a kind of a high-scoring draw, and 2-2 was kind of, the ideal result if you weren't going to be getting a win. Great to see Rasmus Højlund getting on the score sheet, and I hope Rashford doesn't get the assist for that, because as he was doing all night, took the wrong option, overran the ball, tried to take on too many men, running down blind alleys, and the ball ricocheted off a Spurs player into Højlund's path, and he finished it off with an absolute rocket, a beautiful finish, and hopefully that's going to be the start of a little bit of a scoring run for Rasmus. Now, Marcus did take his goal quite well, a lovely kind of 1-2 move with Højlund, who laid the ball off very, very nicely, and Marcus slotted it home, and it's good to see him back on the scoring sheets. Now, you may have seen my episode last week discussing whether or not Marcus Rashford should be sold, and even after today, my stance on that hasn't changed at all. I don't like the way Marcus Rashford plays football. He is incredibly selfish, and I looked on Twitter after the match, and even during the match, I was putting up some tweets. InsideManUtdPod on Twitter. Please subscribe. It'd be great to have you. But I saw a lot of feedback from people that are just completely pissed off with Rashford. Even after the game, he'd scored a goal. People are just tired of seeing the way he plays. He is so monumentally selfish. He always takes the option where he needs to try and beat another man, keep the ball. He doesn't cross. He doesn't lay it off. And we could have scored 4 or 5 goals last night if Rashford had a little bit less selfishness and a little bit more guile and vision and trying to bring other players into play. He was actually finding some decent positions, but he just hangs on to the ball too long, tries to beat an extra man, runs down blind alleys, doesn't look up, doesn't seem to be aware of what options are around him, or if he is aware, completely ignores them. So I was not happy with Rashford's performance last night. I thought it was very, very selfish, and I think we could have got a couple of more goals had he been a little bit more aware of some of the options that were around him. Same goes for Scott McTominay coming on later on in the game. Christian Eriksen did look very leggy, and certainly United will probably be looking to move Christian Eriksen on come the summer, unless he's happy staying at United, maybe, coming on for 30 minutes here and there to try and unlock defences late in games when we do have a lot of possession. He is good for that, but he just does not seem to have the engine to be playing in an Erik ten Hag team that's, got designs on a top 4 or a Premier League title. Scott McTominay coming in to replace Eriksen was trying to get advanced and trying to get forward as often as possible, but so often, and we've seen when McTominay plays, he has to be the man that does all the attacking, despite the fact he's a number 8 or a number 6. When he's got 4 more attacking players ahead of him, he seems to be trying to funnel everything into him, taking shots when he should be passing. His missed header at the end was appalling. Now, he's bailed us out in other games, cool, but when you're at that range, you cannot not get it on target, let alone not scoring the goal. And 10 minutes prior to that, he took a shot when Garnacho was completely open on the right-hand side, and he should have laid it off, and Garnacho could have definitely slotted that in with his strong right foot. And he just decided to take the shot. It was by far the weaker option. And it's just starting to piss me off for experienced players like Rashford and McTominay, who should be looking at what's best for the team, consistently looking at what's best for them, taking on the shots, kind of doing the Stevie Me when in his pomp at Liverpool, just taking the Hollywood approach when he should be playing other people in, trying to be the hero in the match. And it's just not right. In a team that's struggling to get goals as it is, you should be passing to the player that has the best and highest opportunity of putting that ball away. And players like Rashford and McTominay should know better. And they should be putting in the younger players, the less experienced players, if they're in a better position. And they didn't. The United came away with a point, not too bad, excuse me, against a side like Spurs, who have been pretty decent all season. But Spurs were still the better team. There's a lot to improve on that team. I didn't understand Johnny Evans standing off. Who was it? Bentancur for the goal. I didn't understand. Like, he was kind of laying off, and it's like he was trying to invite the shot. Like, the keeper had the post covered. We've heard Vidic and Ferdinand speaking about when they worked with Van der Sar. They would stand off to invite the shot because they just want to, funnel the shot into a place where he knows the keeper's going to be, and they would discuss that. I don't know whether that was something Evans and Onana, were doing. But it didn't work, and he just opened up a clear shot on goal, and he stuck it away. So I don't really understand that. Defensive reinforcements are certainly needed. There's a mentality weakness within that team where if we get a lead, we do not seem to be able to maintain it or contain teams. And we concede within a minute of the kickoff in the second half, which is, it's just been a running theme so often with these teams that they just switch off, and all of a sudden our lead is gone or we're 1-0 down. And it's a disease this team has, and it needs to be fixed. And maybe it needs to be fixed with new personnel, because whatever they're being told, it does not seem to be dropping in. So maybe we need to get new people into the first 11 who can keep leads and try and keep the opposition out. Anyway, that's my kind of rundown of the match from last night. Let us take a look at the headlines. There is so much to cover today. So kicking us off is football transfers with news of United going up against Brighton for Argentinian centre-half Facundo Medina. Now, we were interested in the player back in 2021. And it seems United are still interested in the player, and still plying his trade in France with Lens, who we did play in a friendly. I was at that match at Old Trafford before the season kicked off. Argentinian centre-half, left-footed, will probably be there to provide some form of competition to Lisandro Martinez, with obviously there being some concerns about his injuries now. Can he be relied upon? Do we have another Varane on our hands? Hopefully not. It was great to see him back against Spurs. So apparently United interested. Inter Milan, Juve are the Italian teams interested in taking him to Serie A. But Calcio Mercato have reported that United and also Brighton are interested in signing him. And Brighton obviously having a good track record with recruiting and signing players. So a good sign if Brighton are going after them. But how far have we fallen when we're happy when Brighton are attracted to players that we want to get because we can trust their opinion over our own. So according to the report, Lens would allow Medina to leave the club if an offer of about 25 million quid came in. It seems there's a gentleman's agreement between the club and Medina regarding that transfer fee. So if someone did come in, he wants to go. So clearly he's looking for a move. PSG, Monaco, Atletico also keen on the centre-back. And it looks like he's ready for a move as well. Obviously, with Lisandro Martinez being his fellow countryman. And then obviously Garnacho there as well. It'd be nice to have a little contingent of Argentinian players. They are obviously the world champions at the moment. So it'd be nice to have that kind of nucleus of players at the club. Right age profile, 24. Whether he'd be pushing for a starting berth or replacing Martinez, who knows? But there is talk about him maybe offering some flexibility where he could slot in at centre half. Martinez could maybe go in at left back, could play defensive midfield, which he did do at Ajax. Team Talk also reporting on the same story here as well. So yeah, just they're kind of making more of an article at the fact that Brighton are going in for them as well, and they've got Calcio Mercato quoted here too. And so Medina exit clause, no issue for Brighton or United, it's saying as well. So it's common knowledge that it's the spine of his team that Erik ten Hag is trying to fix. So centre half, midfield, and obviously a new striker is clearly going to be required as well. As for Brighton, they're renowned for signing under the radar players and turning them into big money sales, and are likely eyeing Medina for that very reason again. So yeah, could be something in that. A couple of different news outlets reporting on that story. So there he is. That's the player. So will we be seeing him? Who knows? But time will tell. Whether there's a move in January, it remains to be seen. This young man here, Mr. Arthur Vermeeren, 18-year-old, playing with Royal Antwerp in the Belgian league. Kind of the profile of player that Ineos and Manchester United are going for at the moment, trying to keep youth the order of the day, and obviously going after all the best young talent in Europe. Whether to sell it on, like we've been doing with a lot of our young talent at the moment, much to the chagrin of the United faithful at the moment. But you know, would he be given a chance to maybe, you know, make a move on the first team? We've seen Amad Diallo even having been bought for nearly 40 million and barely getting a sniff of the first team. However, it looks like that might be changing. So as per Football Insider, Royal Antwerp could demand a fee of around 25 million quid for the midfielder, but the total fee could rise to 50 million, including bonuses. So United need to bring in a quality midfielder. Obviously, at the age of 18, he could be a little bit raw, especially with the fact he hasn't been playing in England. Of course, Kobbie Mainoo is a bit of an outlier there. Garnacho getting starts as well. But, you know, if we're going to be replacing the likes of Casemiro and McTominay, Eriksen, you know, we can't be relying on two 18-year-olds in the middle of the pitch to be helping us put a bit of a charge onto the title or even a top four berth. So United looking like they're not going to take up Amrabat's purchase at the end of the season. He's also at AFCON at the moment, so it's looking unlikely United are going to keep him on. I'd have thought he might have kept himself at Old Trafford to play during this time, but maybe Ten Hag went, listen, Sofian, you're probably not going to get that many opportunities. Off you go to the AFCON. It's a bit of a damning indictment of how that transfer has gone. But just as well, we got a loan and didn't buy him permanently, because that would have been a gigantic waste of money from the looks of things. So it's saying here United have been mediocre in the middle of the park, and Vermeeren now looking like a long-term prospect. So yeah, bringing him in young, maybe developing him for a couple of years, get him introduced to the first team and get him some kind of light introduction into the club. So there he is. There's the young man there. And yeah, let's see what happens. Watch this space. But recruits definitely needed in the middle of the park. Scalvini. So we're looking at the faithful MUFC here, just one of the websites that are covering this recently. And yeah, there's also a Bayern Munich fan site also saying that Bayern are speaking to him. Of course, all the fan sites want to connect the player to their team. But there's more and more stories coming up about Scalvini, with United kind of being at the head of the queue to try and recruit the player. You know, 20 years of age, 6'4", big guy, playing with Atalanta. It looks like a move in the summer was more likely, but they are thinking that this could go ahead in January, and 50 million could get the job done. I don't think United have that 50 million, but they are looking to, you know, offload a lot of young players now. So if there's going to be that many outs, you can't help but think there must be a couple of ins coming. You know, I know there's players returning from injury, but injuries can happen between now and the summer. So it's surprising to see that many players leaving and no one coming in. So according to Foot Mercato, the likes of PSG, Bayern and United interest in luring the Italian international, the French outlet having mentioned that United have been monitoring the player for some time. Young player seems to be doing very well at Atalanta for 20 years of age. I think he's got at least 7 international starts, 6'4", a very physical presence, and apparently plays the type of football that Ten Hag would like to introduce. So La Dea, Atalanta's kind of nickname, are looking for 50 million euros to offload their prized asset. And an Italian journalist, Alfredo Padula, revealed suitors will have to agree a fee of around 60 million quid for the 20-year-old. A huge fee for a guy so young, but that seems again to be the order of the day. Spending big on young players that are a little unproven. It's a big gamble. It's kind of like back in cryptos, like I said previously on other episodes. So it asks the question, should United splash the cash to seal the signing of Giorgio Scalvini? What do you think? Thoughts in the comments. Has anyone been watching a lot of Serie A football? A friend of mine who's a big Milan fan, watches a lot of Italian ball, doesn't think that that's the type of player that we need. He's more suited to, like, Atalanta play a very specific type of football, and maybe he's only suited to that type of play. We've seen, players go from that club to here, like Hjulmand and Diallo. So, they've taken a while to bed in. So interesting to know if Scalvini could, but listen, an Italian defender, you're never going to really go too wrong with one of them. So let's see what happens. There he is there. I've done episodes on Scalvini. Check it out in the library. I've done other episodes going into a little bit more detail on Scalvini. Feel free to check them out and get a little bit more information there. But it looks like that race is hotting up a little bit. So United target Hjulmand is the anti-Casemiro in a Ratcliffe era, obviously, with Ratcliffe being quite pissed off with how much was spent on Casemiro's transfer fee and, of course, his wages. Young players are the order of the day. And this player, Hjulmand, playing with Sporting Lisbon at the moment and doing reasonably well there. Lisbon boasting a couple of players United are looking at, namely Goncalo Inacio as well in the centre of the pitch. So Sporting Lisbon and Benfica, two clubs United seem to be wanting to do some business with, both in terms of sales and purchases. But Hjulmand there is the midfielder for Denmark, with some connection with Christian Eriksen and, of course, with Rasmus Højlund. But when we scroll down here, it's saying that United looking to kind of offload midfielders, with Amrabat leaving, Casemiro maybe subject to a move, McTominay as well. And Brailsford is kind of doing an audit of the team. United were in for Ecuadorian teen Oscar Zambrano, very much in the mold of a Moises Caicedo, and it looks like he's got his move to Bournemouth. Clearly, they were able to promise him first-team football that United maybe couldn't, at least this season, with the amount of midfielders that we have. It's claimed on Wednesday that United are also interested in midfielder Morten Hjulmand. Scouts have watched the 24-year-old at least 6 times already this season. It could have been him. It could have been Goncalo Inacio. Who knows? But Christian Eriksen providing an additional allure as a close friend of the Dane international. So excuse us for bearing our Premier League souls, Football 365 here. But our first reaction was, who on earth is Morten Hjulmand? A very fair question. 74 appearances for Austrian side Admira Wacker and 95 for Lecce before moving to Sporting for 15 million quid in the summer. So throwing on a 50 million quid increase, I mean, come on, lads, get real. I mean, I know the Portuguese league like to kind of throw huge price tags onto players, and more often than not, they don't reach it. We've seen Luis Diaz from Liverpool. He came from Porto. He wasn't cheap. Now, he's been okay, but has he reached his potential? Darwin Núñez, definitely not. João Felix, certainly not. So, yeah, an extra 40 million, 50 million being thrown onto this kid's price tag in the space of 6 months. Has he been that impressive? If someone's still applying their trade at the age of 24 in a tier 2 or a tier 3 league, I'm always very skeptical. We've seen that with Sofian Amrabat, 26, big noise, had a good World Cup, was doing well in Italy, comes over to the Premier League, and he just seems to be off the pace. Technical ability isn't really the issue. We saw that with Juan Sebastian Varane when he came over from Serie A, from Lazio. And I mean, he was considered one of the best players in the world, but they play a slower football everywhere in relation to the Premier League, but especially Italy. And players, while they're technically sound and do all the right things and tactically aware and intelligent, good movement on the ball, good reading of the game, if you don't have the ability to process what you need to do that half a second quicker in the Premier League, you will look completely out of place. The speed of thought, speed of movement, speed of action is the core trait you need in the Premier League. And every player that moves to the league says the exact same thing. I couldn't believe the pace at which the game is played. So the technical ability is not the question. It's the speed at which you can do things. And if you're off the pace by half a second, you're going to look lost in the Premier League. And that's why we've seen so many kind of young players go overseas and do very well. Jadon Sancho, Tammy Abraham when he first went over to Serie A. Obviously, Jude Bellingham absolutely destroyed it in Bundesliga and doing very, very well in Spain. Haaland, I mean, obviously these are generational talents, but we've seen it so often with players in Germany coming over and not cutting it. And, if you're still, hanging around those leagues in your mid-20s, I'm always suspect, why haven't you been snapped up quicker? So we go on here. They're just naming some of the kind of the big money players that United have been signing, and the profile of player that they're looking to bring in now at United. So yeah, it's the key thing, Ratcliffe and Brailsford, we looking to change at United, and us not knowing who the hell Morten Hjulmand is bodes well for a future in which relative unknowns could come good at Old Trafford, where superstars have all too recently gone bad in recent times. So I think they're looking to take punts on younger, cheaper players and seeing how they go, because it sure as shit hasn't been working with the expensive ones at the moment. So yeah, Morten Hjulmand, look him up on YouTube if you want to get the typical kind of little what do you call them, the kind of compilation videos. So we move on here. Sorry, I'm at the bottom of this article here. So you might recognize this young man, Rooney Bargi, young wide attacking player that plays for Copenhagen. He scored a goal against us in the Champions League qualifying. So the ghosts of Christmas past coming to haunt us here. But this is a player that I actually looked at before when we were in the group stages and did a little insight in a preview to the United Copenhagen game. He seems to be a big talent, but playing in Denmark, he's a Swedish player, tipped as one of the leaders of the next generation in football, and seems to have pretty big ambitions as what he wants to do as an individual. So he was a key factor in putting United's Champions League campaign to bed, as he scored a winner in a dramatic 4-3 win in November. And he was always going to be a key danger man and a wide right player. Seems to have a lot of quality, a lot of ability. But again, he is in the Danish league, but he did well against us in the Champions League. So there's definitely talent there. And he announced himself on the European stage, they're saying, with this goal. And he's got 7 goals in 17 games, which is a phenomenal return for such a young man at 18 years of age. So this shot him to superstardom, with half of Europe now chasing his signature. And he's named among United are named among the parties that are interested in signing him. So they did an interview with him, and just to kind of find out a little bit more about his ambitions and things like that, and what he plans to do. So speaking with The Athletic, he says, "Well, I wish to become the best player in the world. Of course, playing in the biggest leagues, playing for one of the biggest teams, but being the best player in the world, that is my biggest goal. And why the hell not? You need to think like that if you want to be an elite player that's going to make it at the very top of the game. That's what I'm working towards every day, reaching my goal in 5 years. If you're dreaming, dream big." Yeah, absolutely right, young man. And why not? And it could be, again, he fits into the profile of young players that United are looking to recruit over the next few years. Obviously, there's going to be value in reselling them if they don't work out at the club. And I think they're going to try and go the Chelsea City route of recruiting as many good young players as you can, selling them for a profit if they don't make it into the first team. And if they're good enough, introduce them into the first team. But the days of paying big money for established players who may be coming to the club for a bit of a payday, possibly past their best, maybe not motivated to play that well for the club, and then on high wages, you're not going to be able to shift them, get any sort of a return on the transfer fee, or find clubs that are willing to take them on with those wages. So it's a double whammy when those type of transfers don't work out. So at just £20 million, is he worth a punt? Of course he is. 20 million quid is kind of small change these days. And it could be enough to take him from Copenhagen, bring him into the league, and see if we can give him a chance in the first team, and see if he can, learn his trade and get on with his career. And finally, scroll down the page here a little bit. We've got updates on Mejbri Fernandes. A lot of people very, very upset that he could be leaving to join Benfica. Of course, he was on loan at, was it Granada or Girona? I think it was Girona in Spain. And that loan has been cut short for a move to Benfica. So Benfica very interested. Clearly Benfica, like Brighton, have a very good eye for a player, clearly looking to develop them and sell them on for big profit. And when United got Fernandes back in, I think it was 2020, from Real Madrid, it was seen as a bit of a coup. This was a youngster a lot of people were going after, and he's won all sorts of awards. He's won the Reserve Team Player of the Year award at United. He won the Youth Team Player of the Year award last year when he was on loan at Preston for the season, played in 42 games. And was a revelation for them. And he's now, like, I was quite upset when he left, when we're screaming out for a left back. Shaw's gone, Malassia's gone. We're running around trying to find Cucurella and Reguilon and these kind of guys. And it was the perfect opportunity to give this young lad a chance to come in and shine and maybe put a stamp on that position and maybe oust Malassia and, be the understudy to Shaw. Shaw's 28, he'll be 29 this season. And I think Shaw's only got another 2 or 3 years at the top. But his frame, his injury record, I don't see him still bombing up and down the flanks at the age of 34, 35. So, in 3 years' time, he's hitting 23, could be the absolute perfect replacement. Has a very attack-minded way of playing. And this is exactly the kind of player that we need at the club. So he's been recalled, set to join Portuguese club Benfica on loan for the remainder of the campaign. Now, there was talk of there being a buy option there for 8.9 million euro or 8.6 million pounds, 10 million euro, I think. So Fernandes could be going there permanently. Now, what I've heard, and the rumor I have heard, is that the reason why this is being done so quickly is that United are doing this as a sweetener to help get us to the top of the queue to get João Neves. He's the kind of generational midfield wonder talent that Benfica have at the moment that everyone wants a piece of. So for this loan with Girona, which just kind of went ahead a few months back, for it to be cut short so quickly and for him to be ushered into Benfica's first team like almost immediately, to me, I think there's a little bit of stock in that rumor that United are doing this to get themselves to the top of the queue to get João Neves either now in January or in the summer. And it could be good for both parties. We keep the purchasing fee down low for Fernandes. You keep the fee down low for João Neves. It looks good on our books. We get the players we want. You make your profit. Let's not just, screw each other over in pursuit of trying to get the best deal we can for the player. If we want to trade players, let's try and do this deal as intelligently as possible. And I'm all for United doing intelligent business for a change. So let's see what happens there. It'd be very sad to see him go. I think there should be opportunities afforded to this young man. There definitely should have been this year. But hopefully he will have a great remainder of the season with Benfica. And maybe we do bring him back and try and introduce him into the first team. I'd like to see him replace Malacia. Malacia seems to have a very bad injury. He's been out of the team for a while. It's a knee injury as well. It's an ACL. And, they can reoccur very, very easily. So, I want to see give youth a chance. If ever there was a time in United's transitionary developmental era, it's now. Now is the time to give youth a chance. I mean, not a lot is expected of this team, so I'd like to see Alvaro Fernandes being given more of a chance. But very best of luck in Benfica, Alvaro. I hope it goes well, and let's see what that brings us in terms of either getting João Neves or bringing him back into the first team fold. And finally, we have one Mr. Hannibal Mejbri, another player who was going to leave at the beginning of the season unless he was given more minutes, which seemed to be the order of the day for Ten Hag. He was told, listen, if you're not going to put me in the first team, I want to get minutes. He hasn't been getting enough minutes this year. Although, I mean, I don't know why. With Sofian Amrabat not playing well, Eriksen injured, Casemiro out, McTominay not doing very well, Mainu being given his chances. Maybe he doesn't want to have two young lads in there. I don't know. I think if he's going to have one young lad in midfield, he wants it to be Mainu, and we can see why. He's quality. And but so desperate is Mejbri to get first team minutes. He sacrificed his place with Tunisia at the AFCON, and he really wanted to get this move done and dusted. So it goes on to say that there will be a deal done with Sevilla. There'll be a loan until the end of the season, but there will be a option to buy. But there is no buyback clause from United, so it looks like United might be okay with seeing the back of Hannibal. And they've also taken Mateo Mejia from our youth team. This is another player that Sevilla have snapped up, so maybe they're looking to get two United young lads into their midfield. Sevilla is an absolute circus at the moment. They've been going through a lot of managers and a lot of change at the moment. So a major developments to the story on Sunday with Fabrizio Romano reporting that an agreement had been struck. Mejbri will be moving to Sevilla on loan with an option to buy, which is set at 20 million euros. So United won't have any buyback clause in there. There was previously a belief that United would secure a buyback clause for Mejbri, thus not losing control of his future, but that has not turned out to be the case. So it looks like United are happy just to make a few quid on Mejbri, see what happens him over in Sevilla. No buyback clause. It looks like they're willing to waive bye-bye, which is very sad. A lot of United fans have been following his progress for years through the youth team, and I was certainly hoping to kind of see him put his stamp. He did get a couple of opportunities, scored an absolute cracker of a goal earlier in the season, but clearly not done enough to convince Ten Hag that he deserves to, make one of those starting 11 positions his own. And very, very best of luck to him. Going over to Sevilla, they certainly need some quality to try and get them back up the La Liga table. And let's see what happens for him. But the very best of luck, Hannibal. I hope it works out, and let's see what happens at the end of the season. And that is it for your news today. So that is all the news for today. It's very transfer heavy. A lot of names linked, some of which I'm not too jazzed about. Medina, still plying his trade at the age of 24 in France. So is Jean-Claire. Is Jean-Claire Todibo? I think he's 21, 20 or 21. But I'm just always skeptical of players that are kind of in their, approaching their mid-20s that are still playing in Tier 2 and Tier 3 leagues. It's just... the jump up is just usually too much. And we've seen that with the likes of Sofian Amrabat, other players coming in from Germany and things like that. Even, the likes of Darwin Núñez coming in, who's an okay player, but the type of money Liverpool paid for him coming from the Portuguese league, I mean, is he that value of a player in the Premiership? It's quite clear he's not. So it's always a big gamble bringing players from those leagues at that kind of age. If they haven't already been snapped up, there's usually a reason for it. Not many players escape the gaze of the scouts of every team in Europe, in the top leagues, in England and Spain. So let's see. I mean, it's been pissing off a lot of United fans that the likes of Hannibal Mejbri, Alvaro Fernandes, Jimmy Garner, Ted Menji, Elanga was given opportunities, as was Henderson. And they both weren't good enough. And Elanga will do good stuff at Forest. He's certainly a Premier League player, but he is not the person that's going to be helping us win the Premier League. He just isn't. He's a good player. Wish him well. But he's where he needs to be at the moment, as is Henderson. They aren't the players that are going to get us to the very top. Too often we've kind of made compromises on the quality that we think we can get away with in the team, and we need to be a bit more ruthless. And maybe that's what's being extended towards Hannibal Mejbri, Jimmy Garner, Alvaro Fernandes. You're just not good enough, or you're just not old enough at a time when we need more experience in those positions. They already have a Garnacho. They already have Kobbie Mainoo. They've got Højlund up front as well. There's still a lot of youth going down the spine of that team. And they're probably going to be bringing in some young recruits in centre back as well. So, you can't have youth everywhere. You do need to have that blend of experience. And maybe they think, listen, it's better off just to let these guys go, make a few quid, and make room for other players that might be coming through. We've got Hansen Aron, the young Norwegian attacking midfielder, and maybe we need to make room for them, for Dan Gore, maybe for Joe Hugel up front as well. There is still a conveyor belt of a lot of talent coming through, even though we might get rid of Fernandes and Mejbri and Menji and Garner and Elanga and all these different kinds of players. There's still a lot more to come. Which is exciting, but it's unfortunate that we might be losing Alvaro Fernandes. But I hope we get him back in the summer, because he is going to be the starting left back for Spain in a few years. Of that, I'm very confident. So let's keep an eye on them and see how they go and see how things get addressed in the summer. As always, thank you very, very much for joining me. I hope you had a great weekend. Now it's the start of a new week. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit the notification button, and as always, I will see you on the next one.